Next up, we have our next keynote speaker, Professor Ian Plimer. He has been a professor of earth sciences at the University of Melbourne, emeritus professor, I should say, at the University of Melbourne. He's also been a professor at the University of Adelaide. He's written a number of books. What he doesn't know about geology, mining, and the reason that we should all be looking at gold as part of a diversified portfolio, I don't know who does. Welcome to the Virtual Gold Conference, Ian. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Let's start with your title, which is Preserving Wealth in an Uncertain World. And we are talking gold. Why do you think gold should be part of somebody's portfolio?
Well, gold has been valued for thousands of years. We have the first mention of it in the Bible, very early on in the Old Testament, telling us that we've at least known about gold for 7,000 years. And it would have been found as little pellets and nuggets in streams and rivers. And the color is beautiful. It's malleable. It can be banged out into sheets and into plates, which it was. So the first mineral mentioned in the Bible is gold. The second mineral is bdellium, which is beryl or emerald, or as I can see on your hand there, an aquamarine. And they probably would have come from Pakistan into the biblical world. And I suspect those aquamarines you have are also from Pakistan. And the third mineral mentioned in the Bible is onyx. Now, onyx is a semi-precious stone, but these were valued, and they were valued because they're rare and because they're beautiful. Now, gold still is rare. Gold still is beautiful. If you show someone a 2-ounce lead sinker or a 2-ounce nugget of gold, the first question they ask with the gold is it real? It is rare. It is very, very rare to see native gold. It is beautiful. And so that is one of the great attractions because it is a high unit value commodity. Per weight, it's worth a lot. The same as platinum. Less so for silver, the same for diamonds, especially pink diamonds. Per unit weight, they're worth a lot of money. And that has many, many advantages. And the advantage of storage, the advantages are that you can wear it as jewelry, as you've got. I can see that you've got a gold nugget around your neck. So you're actually doing what people did 5,000 or 8,000 years ago, and that is wear gold and wear gemstones because they're beautiful and because they're valuable and because they store wealth, and then you can pass it on to generations afterwards. You don't lose that wealth.
And so in terms of gold and not losing its value, not losing its wealth, there's lots of people out there at the moment that don't understand why they should even, I guess, look at gold as preserving your wealth. I'd just like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, there are many asset classes, and these can be real estate, or we do have real estate bubbles. They do burst. They can be shares, and even though the share market is romping along quite nicely, I'm old enough to have seen the share market collapse. We do have bubbles in the share market. Yeah. We also have an art market, and people store wealth in an art market. People store wealth in antique cars. People store wealth in all sorts of commodities. However, if there's a great crisis, and talk to any person who's come to this country as a refugee, anyone that left Europe during or after the Second World War, they came with very little. And if they had something, they came with gold or came with gemstones. They didn't come with household furniture. They didn't come with a block of real estate. They came with a movable, high unit value asset. And in my personal life, I spread my assets between gold and silver and platinum and gemstones, also real estate, also cash, also old vehicle, also artwork. I spread it because normally we see when one class of asset is being punished, another is rising. And at present, with the interest rates and inflation, cash is not a very good thing to have. If we look at some of the asset classes, there was an article in today's Australian about pink diamonds, how as an asset class, they have risen enormously. The major source of pink diamonds in the world, the Argyle mine, has closed. There's no more pink diamond being produced. There's only the occasional stone that comes from Mir in Russia. Another asset class, which is gold, is very, very rare. We have to go from a natural process of parts per trillion and to concentrate the gold enough into parts per billion and to have it in a form whereby we can metallurgically separate it. Now, these are very, very difficult problems. Pretty well all the world's alluvial gold, which was at the surface, has been mined. Very little of it is left. So the only gold we can get now is from deep in mines, and it's getting harder and harder to find, harder and harder to mine, harder and harder to process. It is becoming a very, very rare commodity.
Sorry to interrupt you, but don't we have plenty of gold here in Australia in the ground? I mean, we've got gold in Western Australia. We've got gold everywhere in Australia, haven't we?
Well, we've got a lot of gold, but not all of it is economic. And a lot of inland Australia was settled because of gold. Places west of Sydney, like Bathurst, were settled because of gold. They weren't settled for pastoral activities. Places like Bendigo and Ballarat were settled because of gold. Castlemaine, settled because of gold. Kalgoorlie. So much of inland Australia, and Geoffrey Blaney writes about this, much of inland Australia has been driven by an anti-clockwise search around the continent for gold. And inland Australia was settled not for pastoral reasons, but for gold. Most of those gold deposits have been exhausted. We've got a few big ones still going and a few new ones that have been found. In the geological world, we have gold provinces. So if someone says, oh, I've got a fantastic gold project at the Hawkesbury River, just west of Sydney. Well, yes, you can find gold there. But it's not going to be a fantastic project, and you're going to have all sorts of difficulties in mining and treating it. But if someone says, oh, I've got this gold area just north of Kalgoorlie, I start to get interested.
Right.
Or they say just north of Bendigo, I start to get interested because these gold fields have produced tens of millions of ounces of gold. There's still fertile patches of ground. We still don't quite know how the gold formed. Exploration is very difficult. Exploration, we can find gold very easily, but to find economic gold is much, much harder. And then we have all sorts of statistical problems. If you have one gold grain in a drill core, that creates a huge bias. Is that in reality what we're seeing underground, or have we just, by sheer luck with a drill hole, just nicked a grain of gold? So Australia has some provinces which are rich in gold, and this, for me, is a very important part in assessing the quality of gold assets. There may well be new gold fields in Australia, but for about 150 years, people have been toiling in the outback looking for gold. They've been working deep underground. They've been walking every inch of the ground. They've been taking a pan wherever they can go. They've been dry blowing. And we've got a pretty good idea where the gold fields are. And if someone says, well, I found a new gold field on, say, Lord Howe Island, I would say, well, it's possibly someone that's stolen some gold and hidden it there, because geologically, that's not where we're going to find it.
Well, speaking of geologically and your understanding of it, it's something we haven't spoken about today, and some people don't know. How was gold formed?
Well, gold is one of the early elements that formed in our solar system, and we have only a certain number of atoms of gold that are in our solar system. Now, we know we get a little bit of gold deep in the planet. We also find a little bit of gold in meteorites that bombard us with Earth. But the gold content on planet Earth is extremely small. Now, what you have to do is to have some unique processes of chemicals moving through the mantle of the Earth, moving through the crust of the Earth, and having a chemical composition so specific that it picks up gold and quite often ties that gold in with sulfur, or ties it in with arsenic, or ties it in with antimony. So this is why some of the gold deposits are quite arsenic rich or antimony rich, like Fosterville. Quite often it can be tied in with tellurium and selenium, such as in Fiji or such as in Kalgoorlie. So to move gold from having dispersed through a rock to concentrate it, and I'm talking about concentrating only to a couple of parts per million, you have to have something that bonds onto the gold. Okay. And normally it's something like selenium, tellurium, arsenic, sulfur, antimony, and sometimes carbon dioxide compounds. And then we move that. And then to deposit the gold, to concentrate it, we have to bring it out of a solution that might have parts per trillion gold and do something dramatic to that solution, suddenly dilute it, suddenly boil it, suddenly expand it, suddenly cool it. And it's these sudden processes that will drop out the gold very quickly. And quite often it will drop it out with other things that it's in that solution, such as a tellurium or selenium. So we have gold tellurides and gold selenides in some gold deposits.
What's a
We
gold
have gold with
telluride and a
sulfur.
gold, what is that? Gold telluride?
Tellurium, well, you don't want to play with tellurium. That'll make your hair go black and then fall out. Your skin will go black, and ultimately your toes will be pointing to the sky. So keep away from tellurium.
Okay.
Keep away from selenium. They're far more toxic than arsenic and antimony. But normally we find gold bonded on to other elements in a fluid that moves from the mantle through the crust, and it will deposit it in a favorable structure. And this is what I look for when I'm assessing a gold project. Is there a favorable structure or intersection of structures? So can we have a bit of open space where this fluid can move? And if fluid moves into an open space, it suddenly expands. To get the energy to expand, it takes the energy from itself and it cools and it dumps out gold. So when I'm looking at a project, I will firstly look at the people. Do I know the people?
Right.
And I've contaminated the planet with probably 10,000 students. I know quite a few people in the industry. Have these people got form, bad or good form? And then I look at the project. Is the project one in a major structure? Is it in a small structure? Has it got the right rock chemistry for changing the fluid that's carrying the gold to dumping that in the rock? Is there a chance of expansion? Can this deposit go at depth? Can it go to the north or to the south? And so in an exploration project, if I'm assessing it, I look at the upside. I then look, of course, at all the other features which are very important. Is this gold deposit sitting in the middle of a town? Is it sitting in the middle of a city? Well, if it is, forget it. We're not a mining country where we have towns wrapping around ore deposits. I think probably only Mount Isa, Broken Hill and Kalgoorlie, the only towns now that are wrapped around an ore deposit. What is the difficulty in extracting the gold from the ore? Gold is very, very difficult to extract, and a lot of gold is invisible. And this is where we need the metallurgists to be able to dissolve this invisible gold and reprecipitate it such that we can harvest this and melt it and pour it into ingots. So when I look at a gold project, I look at a great diversity of technical factors. Now, for the non-technical investor, I suggest you look at, is this in a gold field? Are they producing mines nearby? Have they produced a substantial amount of gold? And I'm talking 1 million ounces or more. Is there hot competition for ground? Are there a lot of drilling rigs turning in that area? And that, I think, for an investor that doesn't have my technical knowledge and experience,
Exactly.
probably a very, very good guide. That prospectors used to say, where it is, but it's not quite the case. You can find gold in many, many places, but to find economic gold, you need some other parameters.
I think that's a good comment that you make. If for those that are not technically, I guess, as wise as you are and have had such a long history of understanding geology and how gold is formed and where to look for it, give me 3 top there. I mean, we've spoken about people, we've spoken about areas, etc. But for those that are very simply watching today and looking at what's going on, what would you say to them is the simplest thing? Should they be just saying, because we're talking about investing in gold. There's different ways to invest in gold, isn't there, Ian? Because there's physical gold, there's gold mining shares, there's explorers, developers, producers, but then there's the paper stuff, the ETFs. I'd love to hear your views on the different ways that people can invest in this wonderful metal that we call gold.
Well, geology is all about history, and I'm fascinated with history. Paper money and gold have got a long history, and it goes back to Marco Polo in the 13th century. And when Marco Polo went to China, he was absolutely gobsmacked that the emperor insisted that people give up their real wealth, which are gemstones and gold, And in return, they got back a piece of mulberry bark that was dyed and had seals and writing on it saying, well, you know, herewith is $100. And he couldn't believe that people were so stupid to give away their gems and to give away their gold, these long-term carriers of wealth, and in return, get a piece of mulberry bark back. And nothing changes. That's exactly the situation we have today. So in terms of gold as an asset class, I have gold as nuggets. I don't have any coins, but of course you can have physical gold. I don't keep that in the bank. I keep it here, and I could be anywhere at present. I could be in space. I keep it here, just down there it is in the safe.
Professor Plimer lives in Timbuktu at the moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Currently, yes, I'm feral, quite feral. So gold shares, you get much greater leverage with a gold share. So I love the touch of gold. I love the feel of gold. I like looking at the nuggets, and some of them are as big as my hand. And you look at these nuggets and you think, wow, how did that form in nature? And you look at how much wealth is stored in that nugget. Now, if I'm a refugee from Belarus or Ukraine, I'm wanting to escape into the West, I can't take the antique furniture. I can't take my real estate. I can't take my antique car. I can't take my artwork. But as people have done in the past, they sewed gold coins and gold dust into their overcoats. And gold is in many ways an asset of flight, the same as diamond. If you're in an area where there's a war, then you can move gold. Maybe you'll have it stolen, but you've got a chance. So with the gold assets, I prefer physical gold, because you can look at it and lust over and touch it. And I prefer gold shares because you get more bang for your buck. And there have been some fabulous gold stories around. And Australia continues to come up with some great surprises with gold. We also come up with great surprises with other commodities, but we keep finding substantial gold deposits in Australia. And I think that's really exciting.
I love the analogy of the mulberry bark and the fact that Marco Polo said, well, I can't believe they're giving up their gems and taking a piece of paper. The same thing is happening today. I'd love to hear you to share maybe one of your favorite gold stories to our audience today, because you've spent a lot of time not only understanding history, but you've also spent time in the field.
You said the same thing's happening today. It's happening in reverse in China. China has bought a lot of gold, and it is buying about 75 tons a year of gold. So it's actually getting its physical stocks of gold very high. Other countries have sold out their physical stocks. The UK did it. Gordon Brown sold it at something like 230 an ounce. We did it in this country. Peter Costello sold it on the basis that the holding costs were too high.
Wow.
Well, these are serious mistakes. Now, the Chinese have got a very, very long history of gold and preserving gold. Now, if you are in China and you've emerged from a peasant into the middle class, the way of showing that you've made it, not only is your BMW or your apartment, but it's actually what you've got. A nugget of gold around your neck, having gold jewelry, having gold rings. And in China, in former times, the honourable way to commit suicide was to drink molten gold. And
oh my goodness.
This is what men of honour did. Now, I don't know whether they cremated the body and harvested the gold back again. So gold has got a really, really long history. We had in...
Hang on. You're saying that in China, if people wanted, they drank molten gold, so it would burn them? Or?
Yeah, it would kill them. Yeah, it was a gentleman's way of suicide. None of this gun to the head stuff. That's only a lead bullet. You want gold, and so you drink molten gold, and it burns your gizzards out.
Oh dear, so is that a fable, or is that?
Oh no, Scout's honour. No, that's Ridgy Ditch. There's some wonderful stories about gold. The gold price varies, as we all should know, with the Indian wedding season, as does the silver price, because in some countries especially in the Islamic countries, women are not allowed to own property. And so if you are divorced, the only thing that a woman has that is hers is gold, her gold jewelry that's on her. And this is why in Middle Eastern countries, you often see women carrying kilos of gold as jewelry, because if there's a divorce, that's theirs. They don't own any of the property. So this has been around for a very long period of time, that if you are divorced, if you have to escape a war zone, if you have to hide wealth, then gold, because it's such a high unit value commodity, you can hide it, you can carry it, you can wear it, and it's beautiful.
I'd love to hear your comments, perhaps on, you mentioned China is buying up 75,000 tons of gold. Do you
75 tons a month.
A month?
Yeah, not 75,000, 75 tons a month.
That's a lot of gold.
Of course it is, yes.
Where are they buying this gold from?
Well, on the open market, but China is also a substantial gold producer.
Yep. They are. What do you think is the reasoning behind that? It's not just, is it for wealth preservation? Is it to get away from the US dollar? Have you got a view on this?
Oh, I think it's very much ingrained in the Chinese culture, just the same as is in the Indian culture in the wedding season, just the same as it is in the Arabic culture to have physical gold. It's very much a cultural thing, but that's tied in with preservation of wealth. It's tied in with passing the wealth on to the next generation. You can pass gold on to the next generation. But again, if there's a despotic government, then they might not know about the gold, but they certainly know about your property. So this is very deep in the psyche of some communities.
I know that you love history. It's all about geology. Do you think that we're living in times right now where it is a little bit uncertain? It is a little bit volatile. We've got a very much an investor audience here today. What would you say to them at the moment? Because gold, look, I was talking to Rick Rule recently, and he was saying no one's looking at it at the moment. So quite frankly, now is a great time to get yourself set.
Well, he's a professional investor. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm an observer from a distance. But we are living in times when the bank interest rates are very low, where we have a housing bubble. And what happens to bubbles? They burst. And we have had very low inflation. It's just starting to rear its ugly head. And I suspect that the measure of inflation is cooking the books, in that there are some areas where we do see inflation, but it doesn't go into any measurement. So here we have times of low interest rates, low inflation, metal prices going very well. We are having some commodities where the price has really rocketed, like copper. Copper's gone up, partly because of the electronics industry, but partly because of more and more people are buying electric vehicles. And in the next 15 years, we're going to have about 200 big copper mines close.
Wow.
In order to service a community that wants to go net zero or have electric vehicles, we do not have the lithium, we do not have the graphite, we do not have the copper, we do not have the cobalt, we don't have the nickel, and we don't have enough geologists to explore for it. We don't have enough mining engineers to mine it and metallurgists to treat it. So it's all very nice to wave your arms around about commodities, but there are some realities. But the reality with gold is that the global production of gold has changed. It used to be dominated by South Africa. It isn't any longer. China and the US are big gold producers. Australia's gold production has gone up, but we're not at the top. So gold production varies very much upon the jurisdiction in terms of the requirements for exploration, mining and rehabilitation. Gold is an asset class which many people have used as a hedge against inflation. So I don't understand today's world. We have the threat of a possible conflagration with China over Taiwan. We have low interest rates. We have low inflation, yet we have eye-wateringly high debt. Now, that just doesn't add up. And if I don't understand it and it doesn't add up, then you go back to the basics. And the basics are in the Bible with high unit value commodities, the first one being gold. Or you go back to Marco Polo and you think, well, here's a government printing money, mulberry bark, and inflating its way out of trouble.
Yep.
Go to your basics. So that's what I do in my personal life in terms of investment advice. Then I'm sure you'll get some good advice from people at this conference.
And I'm sure we will, Ian. It's been great to chat to you. And I think the key takeaway from me is none of us are really understanding what's going on. Get back to basics. And one of them, as you say, was from the Bible. That is gold. It's a way to preserve your wealth. It's not an investment. It's a way to preserve your wealth, ladies and gentlemen. Please give me a very virtual warm thank you to Professor Ian Plimer. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Virtual Gold Conference.
Thank you for having me.